Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where we checked out light guns for various generations of computers and consoles, but today we're checking out a machine that could only be used with a light gun, and that console was the Action Max. The Action Max, the first real game action system, was made by World of Wonder and released in the US in 1987. And as you might have guessed from the huge box, it's a light gun based console. And it's also one that will only use VHS tapes and had only 5 games released for it. Inside the box we get everything neatly laid out in this foam packaging. We have the main console, the light gun, the hit light, this set of cheap looking headphones, a bag of manuals, and this nice space where a cassette would have been if I had one. If we check out the console itself in more detail, we find a number of switches. This includes the power switch, the player switch, and the game setting, which is either normal or special. There are also these 2 dials. The first one sets the distance you are from the screen. I think this is mostly setting the sensitivity that the gun reacts to light. And the second dial is for the volume. And the last thing on top is this LED that tells us what our score is. Along the front we have 2 ports, both of which are this headphone style connector. One is actually for the headphones and the other is for the gun. If we look underneath we find an opening that we can put 4 C-style batteries in, but if we look around the back we can find a power port and 2 more 3.5mm jacks. One is actually to receive audio from the VHS player or the TV, and the other is to connect the score light. The light gun itself is quite basic, but in keeping with the era. There is this single trigger button, which has a tendency to stick if given the chance, and this was released at a time where you could still make toys look pretty close to real weapons. As we've seen, there was absolutely nowhere for games to go into the machine. They were completely done via VHS tapes that you would have to play on your VCR. And to set this all up, you'd first have to plug in the light gun, then the headphones if you wanted to get stereo sound, or if you didn't, you can just use the built-in speaker. You also need to connect the score signal to the console, and that box itself sticks to the TV via the suction cup. The problem is that it needs to go in exactly the right place on the screen, which we can't tell until we start a game. So let's do that. This is Sonic Fury, one of the 5 games that were released. At the beginning of all of them, you'll get this calibration screen that lets you stick the cup to the screen, which is typically in the bottom right hand corner, but exactly where can move around a little bit. Then you need to make sure you've got the brightness, contrast, and the sensitivity of the console just right, as it can be a little bit fiddly. Now you might have guessed by now that the console is completely passive. It does not have any way of outputting anything to the screen, and there's no carts or any other game input. Basically, it just watches the video and scores you as you play. Targets will show up with this white flashing area that you have to target, and if everything's set up just right, the score light will glow red when you hit a target, and the console itself will make some sounds as well. The way this works is by using 2 sets of flashing white spots. One is where the score light is placed, as that has a light sensor just under the suction cup, and the other is on the target, which the light gun is meant to pick up. When the target is an enemy, both spots will flash at the same time with each other. And if it's a friendly, the flashes are opposite. With that information, the console can work out if you missed, hit an enemy, or a friendly, which is quite neat, if a little bit limiting. Thankfully, the DVD I managed to get had all 5 games on it already. As the gameplay is pretty much identical across all of them, there really isn't much to say on each game, but let's quickly check them out anyway. Sonic Fury was the game that actually came with the console, and as we can see, it's an aerial combat game that looks as if it just used a bunch of stock footage and some model airplanes on strings. As the sound effects are fixed in the machine, it really does feel weird hearing those ricochet sounds when you miss. It also doesn't help that the targets really move around quite fast, and the friendlies are constantly getting in the way. With all the missile firings and planes exploding being fixed in the video, it doesn't really matter if we hit them or not. It's just down to the console itself to keep track of your score, and the faster you hit a target, the more points you'll get, and hitting a friendly target will lose you points as well.
I'm getting weird target information on my heads-up display. Anybody else?
Yeah, I haven't been able to get a clean one.
Blue Thunder is based on the movie of the same name, and uses footage from the film, which makes showing it a little bit risky. But only a tiny amount of the film actually made it into the game, because on average each one is only about 15 minutes long, and to think people complain about the length of games these days. As we can see, it's very similar in style to the last game, but now you're in a high-tech helicopter using a gun to shoot at targets rather than a plane. Amazingly, you can actually lose points if an enemy shoots back at you when you hear 5 shots in a row. I'm guessing they must have had a special set of light flashes for it to know when it needed to do that, or the console itself just randomly picked when a target would shoot back. After all that flying around, we end up at 38 Ambush Alley, which takes place at the police academy, where now we're taking the toughest test outside of being on the mean streets of the city, Ambush Alley. And as you might expect, there are wooden targets that will pop up that you have to hit, and some you have to avoid. Again, when a target goes down, or when it has a bullet ricochet off the side of it, is all fixed in the video, so you're not really having any impact. But it seems that wasn't enough to train the police, and so you have to go out onto some movie set and you get to shoot at some shop mannequins instead. And it really is quite weird not having any interactivity with the game. Whether you hit them or not, makes no difference. The game itself will just keep trucking along. We're going to the far-off world of 2021 in Hydrosub 2021, which sounds like quite an appealing place to be next year, and shows off some very fancy effects very early on. As for plot, well, we've found the Lost World, yay!
The Lost World. Man your battle stations. And gunny officers. We have to be prepared to defend the Sea Dragon against anything.
And we what? Did he say we have to protect the Sea Dragon? Is that the name of our sub?
Then we'll be facing the most abominable creatures the gods ever put on this world. Half fish, half machine. Metallic crabs as big as elephants.
And when did God put creatures in the sea that are half machine? And why does he keep calling us gunny officers? What is going on in this game?
And gunny officers.
Things don't look that much better when we get in game, as we have what looks and sounds like ships from Buck Rogers that are attacking us. And it feels like we're playing someone's fever dream while they play with their bath toys while taking a soak. The final game is the rescue of Pops Ghostly, which starts with 2 kids running into a house, then a ghost pops up and asks for our help. Happens every day. Clearly, all of WoW's game development budget went into this game, because just look at those special effects. Ooh, mwah. It seems that those ghosts are not waiting to hear an answer from us, as they tell us straight away to just deal with the monsters. Oh, and by the way, they'll throw fireballs at us. Good luck! As you might expect, the film is full of discount Halloween items and random puppets. And then about halfway through, an episode of Doctor Who breaks out, or is it a random Amiga demo? Not sure, as we're flying through space. And then when we finally get back to the house, well, it seems to end with a laugh that's totally not ominous at all.
I hope so.
On top of the normal game that we've been playing so far, the console actually has 2 other modes, which is set with this switch and is determined on its position when the console is started versus when it's running. The first of these special modes is called Reflex, which will have the machine count down on each set of targets, and the quicker you hit them the better. Missing or hitting friendlies will just end up with a number of 99. The goal is just to have the best time that you can get. The other mode is limited ammo, which is mostly you gain a point for each shot you hit, and then you lose 2 points if you miss 4 shots in a row. Now these add a little bit of replayability to the games, but as you might imagine, you are still limited by how much your actions actually impact the game. It's easy to see why so few games were made for this system, as while the titles may have looked nice, the lack of impact in the games really hurt the playability. So it's an interesting novelty, but not one you would return to. And until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was a VHS Powered Games console, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can let me know down in the comments, or you can use those buttons just below. You know the ones I mean. Or if you're not sure yet, then you can check out 2 other videos that I've done that are on the screen right now. So thank you again, and I hope to see you soon.